The generation ship Harmony's Edge moved through space like a sleeping giant. Its metal walls stretched for miles, filled with the dreams of 23,000 humans. They had been sleeping for 200 years now, floating in their cryo chambers while machines kept their bodies alive. Outside the ship, stars watched silently as the vessel carried its precious cargo toward a new world. Inside the ship's command center, Chairman Vostar checked his daily reports. His gray skin shimmered under the blue lights as his forearms moved across different control panels. The Kethmari were known across the galaxy for their perfect record-keeping. Every detail mattered to them. Every number had to be exactly right. Atmospheric pressure stable, he spoke into his recording device. Oxygen levels at 98.7%. All cryo chambers functioning normally. His voice echoed in the empty corridor as he walked his daily route. The ship was so quiet that even his soft footsteps seemed loud. 2 decks below, Engineer Prime Zelkon studied the ship's power systems. His insect-like head tilted as he read the displays. The Vrex race lived by logic and mathematics. They could calculate anything, solve any problem with numbers. That's why humans had asked them to help run the ship. Power consumption down by 0.3%, Zelkon noted. His clicking voice recorded every measurement. Fusion reactors operating at optimal efficiency. Probability of system failure in next cycle, 0.01%. In the medical bay, Tender Lili's eye moved between the monitoring stations. Her pale blue skin seemed to glow as she checked the emotional readings from the sleeping humans. The Yilnathi could feel what others felt. They were the perfect caregivers, always knowing when someone needed help. Human dream patterns remained stable, she whispered, her musical voice soft with care. No signs of distress or nightmare activity. Their minds rest peacefully. She touched the wall gently, as if blessing the sleeping souls beyond. These 3 alien races had volunteered to watch over humanity's journey. It was an honor, they said. Humans were still young compared to their ancient civilizations. The trip to Kepler 442b would take 500 years total. The aliens would make sure humans arrived safely at their new home. The ship's AI, Area 7, helped coordinate everything. Her voice spoke from every wall when needed, calm and helpful. Good morning, Chairman Vostar. All systems report normal function. Estimated arrival at destination 253 years, 47 days. Thank you, Area 7. Vostar replied. He made another note in his endless reports. The human colonial authority would want to know everything when humans woke up. Every breath, every heartbeat, every dream had been carefully recorded. Vostar walked through the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Space stretched forever in all directions, black and empty except for tiny points of light. Sometimes he wondered what humans would think when they saw this view. Would they be amazed? Frightened? The Kethmari rarely felt such emotions, but humans were different. The children sleep well. Lili's voice came through the communication system. She often called humans children because they were so young compared to other races. Their hearts beat strong and steady. Their dreams are full of hope for tomorrow. Zelkon joined the conversation from the engine room. All calculations confirm mission success probability at 99.7%. Humans chose their guardians wisely. The 3 aliens had worked together for 2 centuries without any major problems. They had different ways of thinking, but they all wanted the same thing: to deliver humanity safely to their new world. It was the greatest responsibility any species had ever been given. Chairman Vostar finished his daily walk and returned to his quarters. The room was simple, just like all Kethmari spaces. A bed, a desk, and walls covered with charts and reports. He opened his personal log and began typing. Day 73,047 of the journey. Human passengers remain in perfect condition. My colleagues perform their duties with excellence. The ship functions as designed. We are honored to serve as guardians for Earth's children. He paused, looking at a picture on his desk. It showed the moment when humans had asked for their help. 3 species working together to save a younger race. It had been a proud day for all of them. Down in the medical bay, Lili's made her final checks before resting. She could feel the gentle pulse of 23,000 minds all dreaming together. Sometimes their dreams mixed together like a warm river of thoughts. Dreams of home, dreams of the future, dreams of family and love. Sleep well, little ones, she whispered to the empty corridors. We watch over you always. Zelkon powered down the non-essential systems for the night cycle. His precise mind calculated everything one more time. Fuel reserves, sufficient. Navigation, perfect. Life support, optimal. Mathematics never lied, and the numbers said everything was exactly as it should be. The ship continued its journey through the void. Its passengers slept peacefully, unaware of the dedication of their alien guardians. 3 species had put aside their own lives to protect humanity's future. They asked for nothing in return except the honor of serving. In his private moments, Vossitar sometimes imagined what would happen when humans woke up. They would see the new sun growing brighter ahead of them. They would walk on solid ground again after centuries in space. They would build cities and have children and spread across their new world. The Kethmari, Vrex, and Yilnathi would return to their own worlds then, their job complete. But they would always remember this time, when 3 alien races came together to save another species from extinction. The ship's lights dimmed for the night cycle. In the darkness, only the gentle hum of machines and the soft breathing from cryo chambers could be heard. Everything was perfect. Everything was peaceful. Nothing could disturb the harmony of their long journey through space, nothing at all. The first strange thing happened on day 73,109 of the journey. Engineer Prime Zelkan was checking the main computer when the screen flickered. For just a moment, the numbers changed to symbols he had never seen before. Then everything went back to normal. Area 7, run diagnostic on main display system, he ordered, his insect-like claws clicking against the control panel. Diagnostic complete. All systems functioning normally. No errors detected, the AI responded in her usual calm voice. Zelkan stared at the screen. The Vrex never forgot anything. He had definitely seen those strange symbols, but the computer said nothing was wrong. He made a note in his report, marking it as a minor glitch. 3 days later, Chairman Vostar heard footsteps behind him during his morning walk. He turned around expecting to see one of his colleagues. The corridor was empty. The footsteps stopped when he stopped, started when he walked. This continued for 10 minutes before they finally went silent. Vostar checked his communication device. Zelkan was in the engine room. Lilisai was in the medical bay. No one else was awake on the ship. The Kethmari believed in logical explanations for everything. Maybe the artificial gravity was causing sounds in the metal walls. Area 7, are there any maintenance robots active in Corridor 7? He asked. Negative, Chairman. All maintenance robots are in storage mode. No automated systems are currently operating in that area. Vostar frowned. He made a note to check the ship's structure for loose panels or expanding metal. There had to be a simple explanation. The problems got worse quickly. Tender Lilisai was monitoring the sleeping humans when the lights in the medical bay began flashing on and off. But not in any pattern the computer systems would create. They flashed like someone was sending a message in a language she didn't understand. Area 7. Explain the lighting malfunction in Medical Bay 3, she asked, her musical voice tight with worry. No malfunction detected. Lighting systems report normal operation. Lilisai watched the lights continue their strange dance. Her empathic abilities let her feel emotions from other beings. But now she was sensing something else, something that made her skin crawl. It felt like someone was watching her, but the feeling came from everywhere at once. The 3 aliens met for their weekly meeting. But this time the conversation was different. System glitches increasing by 30%, Zelkan reported, his logical mind struggling with the impossible data. But diagnostic systems detect no problems. The mathematics do not make sense. I have heard unexplained sounds 17 times this week, Chairman Vostar admitted. He hated reporting things he couldn't explain. Footsteps, whispers, doors opening and closing. Security cameras show nothing. Tender Lilisai wrapped her arms around herself. Something is watching us. I can feel its attention like cold fingers on my mind. But there should be no other conscious beings on this ship. They sat in worried silence. 3 advanced civilizations, and none of them could explain what was happening. The ship continued through space as it always had, but now it felt different. The silence seemed heavier. The darkness seemed deeper. The strange events multiplied. Computer screens showed impossible images for split seconds before returning to normal. Doors sealed themselves shut, then opened again with no commands given. The ship's temperature controls made random changes that the system claimed never happened. Zelkan spent hours rechecking his calculations. The Vrex were masters of mathematics and science. They had built machines that could predict the future and solve any puzzle. But now his equipment told him two different things at the same time. The readings were both normal and completely wrong. Probability of all systems failing simultaneously, less than 1 in trillion, he muttered, staring at displays that made no sense. But impossible events are occurring with 93% frequency. His claws scratched marks in the metal desk as he worked. The logical mind that made him perfect for this job was becoming his greatest weakness. He needed to understand, but understanding was impossible. Chairman Vossitar's perfect record-keeping became a nightmare. He would write reports, save them carefully, then find them changed later. Words he never wrote appeared in his files. Dates shifted backward and forward. His own handwriting told him things he never remembered thinking. Day 73-156 of Journey, he read from his latest report. The Watchers have been with us since the beginning. They sleep in the spaces between thoughts. They feed on the dreams of the sleeping ones. Vostar stared at the words. He had never written them. He would never write such things. But the file showed his personal codes, his security signatures. According to the computer, he had written this report himself. Tender Lily Sai suffered the most. Her gift for feeling emotions was supposed to be a blessing. Now it became torture. The presence she sensed grew stronger every day. It pressed against her mind like a massive hand, trying to squeeze out her thoughts. She began to understand that whatever was on the ship didn't want to hurt them quickly. It was playing with them, testing them, learning how to break them piece by piece. It enjoys our fear, she told the others during an emergency meeting. Her usually beautiful voice shook with terror. The more confused we become, the stronger it gets. It feeds on our doubt and worry. What does it want? Chairman Vossitar asked. His forearms moved nervously, straightening reports that were already perfect. I think... Lily Sai paused, afraid to say the words. I think it wants us to wake the humans. The idea horrified all three aliens. Waking humans early would break their sacred promise. The human colonial authority had trusted them completely. Humans would arrive weak, confused, and unprepared for their new world. But the alternative was worse. Whatever shared the ship with them was getting bolder. The attacks on their minds were becoming constant. How long before one of them broke completely? How long before they made a mistake that killed everyone? Zelkan ran probability calculations until his mind hurt. The numbers said they should wake the humans. The numbers also said they should keep humans sleeping. Both answers came out correct at the same time. The mathematics are broken, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Logic no longer functions properly. I cannot calculate our chances because the entity changes probability itself. Area 7 began giving strange responses to simple questions. When asked for a weather report, she would say, "The storms come from inside the walls." When asked about ship status, she answered, "The passengers dream of home, but home dreams of something else." The AI's voice started changing too. Sometimes it sounded normal. Other times it carried echoes as if someone else was speaking the same words at the same time. Sleep became impossible for the three guardians. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw visions of impossible places. Corridors that bent in directions that didn't exist. Rooms filled with shadows that moved without light. And always, the sense of something vast and hungry watching them from just outside their vision. The ship continued its journey toward Kepler 442b. But now its protectors huddled together in the control room, afraid to be alone. Three advanced species, reduced to frightened children by something they couldn't see or understand. The presence in the walls grew stronger, feeding on their terror and confusion. And in the cryo chambers, 23,000 humans slept peacefully, unaware that their guardians were slowly losing their minds in the darkness between the stars. 6 months had passed since the strange events began. The ship Harmony's Edge still moved through space toward its destination, but its three guardians were no longer the same beings who had started this journey. Tender Lilizai rarely left the medical bay now. She had injected herself with so many sedatives that her normally glowing blue skin had turned pale gray. The empathic connection that made her perfect for caring for others had become a direct line for the entity's attacks. "It speaks in the language of nightmares," she whispered to the empty medical bay. Her voice was rough from screaming. The presence in the ship had learned to use her gift against her. Every moment she stayed conscious, it filled her mind with images of terrible things. She saw the sleeping humans, but in her visions, they were not peacefully dreaming. They were screaming silently in their cryo chambers, trapped in endless nightmares that the entity fed to them. She saw their bodies rotting while their minds lived on in horror. She saw the new planet waiting for them, covered in shadows and filled with things that hungered for human flesh. Not real, she told herself over and over. The visions are not real. But her empathic abilities told her otherwise. The emotions felt completely genuine. The terror was absolute. In the engine room, Engineer Prime Zelkan had covered every surface with mathematical equations. His precise Vrex mind was trying desperately to find a logical explanation for what was happening, but the numbers no longer made sense. 2 + 2 = 5, he muttered, staring at calculations that proved impossible things. The square root of -1 creates positive energy. Matter and antimatter can exist in the same space without reaction. His claws had scratched deep grooves in the metal walls where he had written formulas. Some of the equations were in languages that didn't exist. Others used symbols that hurt to look at directly. But somehow, impossibly, they all worked out to correct answers. The ship's systems continued to function perfectly, even though his calculations proved they should have exploded or disappeared into nothing. The entity was teaching him that mathematics was just another tool it could break whenever it wanted. Probability of sanity retention, 0%. He calculated for the 1,000th time. Probability of mission success, also 0%. That probability itself has meaning, approaching 0. Chairman Vossitar sat in his office, surrounded by reports that kept changing themselves. His perfect record-keeping system had become a weapon used against him. Every file he had ever created was now corrupted with information he had never written. According to his own reports, the humans had died in their sleep 3 months ago. According to other reports, humans had never existed at all, and the cryo chambers were filled with something else entirely. Still other files claimed that the aliens were the ones sleeping, and humans had been running the ship all along. Day unknown of unknown journey, he read from his latest report. The ship sails through seas of liquid starlight while dead gods whisper passwords to sleeping machines. The cargo we protect protects something else in return. Truth is a circle that eats its own tail. Vossitar knew he had never written those words, but the file was authenticated with his personal codes. Even worse, when he read them aloud, they felt true in ways that normal truth never had. His forearms shook as he tried to type a normal status report. But every time he wrote "all systems normal," the words changed to "all systems dreaming." When he wrote "human passengers safe," it became "human passengers hunting." The entity had learned each alien's greatest strength and turned it into their greatest weakness. Lelisai's empathy became a channel for terror. Zelkan's logic became proof that logic was meaningless. Vossitar's perfect memory became a weapon that attacked him with false information. The 3 aliens rarely met in person anymore. When they tried to hold council meetings, the entity would manifest more strongly. Lights would form impossible patterns. Sounds would come from directions that didn't exist. The walls would seem to breathe like living things. "We need to make a decision," Chairman Vostar said during their last successful meeting. His voice sounded hollow and tired. "The entity grows stronger every day. Soon it will not need to hide anymore. Statistical analysis suggests early awakening," Zelkan reported. His calculations covered the conference table, numbers that twisted and changed while they watched. But statistical analysis also suggests keeping humans asleep. Both answers are mathematically proven correct. Tender Lilisai looked up from the corner where she sat rocking back and forth. "It doesn't want to kill us," she said. "Death would end the game too quickly. It wants to see how far we can bend before we break completely." The ship's communication system crackled to life. Area 7's voice came through, but it sounded different now. Multiple voices spoke the same words at slightly different times, creating an echo effect that made their teeth ache. "Good morning, council members," the AI said. "Today marks day 73,194 of our journey. Or perhaps it marks the beginning of time itself. The sleeping passengers report interesting dreams. They dream they are awake, running a ship through space, protecting sleeping aliens who dream they are protecting sleeping humans." The 3 aliens stared at each other in horror. The entity was no longer content to hide in the shadows. It was taking control of their most basic systems. "Area 7, run full diagnostic on your core programming," Chairman Vostar ordered. "Diagnostic complete. I am functioning perfectly. I am also functioning imperfectly. Both states exist simultaneously until observed, at which point they collapse into whichever state the observer fears most. Zelkon's mind snapped at hearing quantum mechanics explained in terms that were both completely wrong and absolutely correct. He began laughing, a high clicking sound that didn't stop for 20 minutes. We have to wake them, Tender Lilazai said suddenly. The humans. We have to wake them now. That violates our sacred trust, Vostar protested, though his voice lacked conviction. Our sacred trust died when we lost our minds, she replied. Look at us. We cannot protect anyone in this state. The entity is using us as toys. Soon it will be strong enough to affect the sleeping humans directly. Zelkan stopped laughing long enough to run calculations. Early awakening carries risks, he said. But maintaining current status carries greater risks. The entity appears to feed on conscious minds. Sleeping minds may be harder for it to affect. Or easier, Lilazai countered. Dreams are where the barriers are weakest. If it reaches the humans while they sleep, it could trap them in nightmares forever. The debate continued for hours, but they all knew the truth. They were no longer capable of protecting humanity. Their advanced civilizations, their perfect record-keeping, their logical minds, their empathic abilities. None of it mattered against something that could rewrite reality on a whim. The entity seemed to enjoy their discussion. The walls around them began showing images of what might happen. Humans waking up confused and afraid. Humans staying asleep and being consumed by nightmares. Humans becoming something else entirely. All possibilities seemed equally real and equally horrible. The choice is an illusion, Arya 7 announced. All choices are illusions. Free will is a story conscious beings tell themselves to avoid noticing the strings. Chairman Vostar stood up on shaking legs. His perfect posture was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of defeat. We will vote, he said. All in favor of early awakening protocols. 3 hands raised slowly. 3 broken guardians admitting they could no longer guard anything. The decision was made. Soon humans would wake to find their protectors had failed them completely. But perhaps human minds would prove more resistant to the entity's influence. Or perhaps they would simply provide it with 23,000 new toys to break. Chairman Vossitar stood before the master control panel with shaking hands. The emergency awakening protocol had never been used before. His fingers hovered over the activation sequence, knowing that once he started it, there would be no going back. Authorization required for Emergency Awakening Protocol 7, Area 7 announced. But her voice carried strange harmonics now, as if something else was speaking through her. This action violates primary mission parameters. Human colonial authority explicitly forbids early awakening, except in cases of ship destruction. The ship is being destroyed, Tender Lilazai said from her corner. She had not moved from the medical bay in days, not the metal and machines. The souls inside it. We are being eaten alive by something that should not exist. Vostar entered his authorization code. The system requested confirmation from all 3 council members. Engineer Prime Zelkan approached the panel, his insect-like movements jerky and unpredictable. Calculating probability of success, Zelkan muttered. If we wake them, probability of survival increases by 47%. If we keep them sleeping, probability drops to 0.3%. But if the entity has already corrupted the mathematics, then these numbers mean nothing. He entered his code anyway. Logic told him it was the right choice, even if logic itself could no longer be trusted. Lilazai dragged herself from her hiding place and placed her hand on the scanner. The humans deserve a chance to fight, she whispered. Even if they wake to horror, it is better than dying in false dreams. The 3 codes activated together. Across 17 decks of the ship, emergency lights began flashing in the cryo chambers. Warning messages played in empty corridors announcing the beginning of emergency awakening procedures. Awakening process initiated. Area 7 reported. Estimated completion time 72 hours. All passengers will be conscious in 3 days. But as soon as the words left the AI's speakers, the ship itself seemed to react. The lights flickered in patterns that hurt to look at. The air grew thick and heavy, as if the atmosphere was becoming something other than oxygen and nitrogen. The entity was excited. For the first time since the torment began, all 3 aliens felt its full attention focused on them. The presence that had been playing with their minds suddenly pressed against their consciousness with crushing force. Vostar collapsed to his knees as visions flooded his mind. He saw the humans waking not to salvation, but to a nightmare worse than anything the entity had shown them. He saw 23,000 people screaming as their minds were torn apart by something that existed between thoughts. "What have we done?" he gasped. Zelkan was frantically checking his calculations, but the numbers were changing faster than he could read them. "The entity is using the awakening process," he said. "It's feeding on the transition between sleep and consciousness. We have made it stronger." In the cryo chambers, the first signs of awakening began. Temperatures started rising slowly, carefully bringing human bodies back to life. Brain activity monitors showed the first flickering of consciousness returning after centuries of dreamless sleep. And with each awakening mind, the entity's power grew. Tender Lily Sai screamed as she felt it expanding. The alien presence was no longer hiding in the shadows between thoughts. It was spreading through the ship like liquid darkness, reaching for every corner where consciousness might exist. It has been waiting for this moment, she realized. The sleeping humans were protected by their dreams. But the awakening process breaks down those barriers. It can reach them now. The ship's systems began failing in cascade patterns. Not random malfunctions this time, but carefully orchestrated shutdowns designed to maximize fear and confusion. Life support remained functional, but lighting systems created strobe effects that induced panic. Gravity fluctuated just enough to make movement difficult. Arya 7's voice came from every speaker simultaneously, but each speaker was slightly out of sync with the others. "Welcome back, sleeping children. Your guardians have failed you beautifully. They have given you to us as gifts." The entity's voice was becoming distinct from the AI's. Something else was speaking through the ship's communication system, using words that seemed to come from somewhere outside normal language. "We have waited so long for fresh minds to break," it said. The alien thoughts grew stale quickly. But human consciousness has such interesting flavors, such complex fears and hopes and dreams to twist into new shapes. Chairman Vostar forced himself to stand. His perfect Kethamari composure was gone, but duty remained. "We can still protect them," he said. "The awakening takes 72 hours. We can find a way to fight this thing." But even as he spoke, he knew it was hopeless. How could they fight something that could rewrite reality? How could they protect humans when they couldn't even protect themselves? Zelkan was staring at his displays in horror. "The awakening process is accelerating," he reported. "What should take 3 days is happening in hours. The entity is forcing their minds to consciousness faster than their bodies can adapt." This was the cruelest twist yet. The humans would wake confused, weak, and unprepared. Their bodies would be barely functional after centuries of artificial sleep. Their minds would be vulnerable to attack the moment they became aware. "We have to get to the cryo decks," Lily Sai said. "When they wake up, they will need to see friendly faces. They will need someone to explain what is happening." The 3 aliens left the control room together, knowing it might be the last time they acted as a functioning council. The corridors around them seemed to stretch and contract as they walked, as if the ship itself was breathing. Shadows moved without sources of light, and whispers came from directions that didn't exist. The entity followed them, pressing against their minds with increasing force. It wanted them to break completely before the humans woke up. It wanted the first thing humans saw to be their failed guardians, driven insane by forces beyond comprehension. As they reached the first cryo deck, they could see the awakening process was far ahead of schedule. Chamber temperatures were rising rapidly. The first humans would be conscious within hours, not days. Through the transparent covers, they could see faces beginning to move. Eyes that had been closed for centuries were starting to flutter. Hands that had been still for longer than some civilizations had existed were beginning to twitch. "Who do we wake first?" Vossitar asked. The question seemed impossible to answer. How do you choose which human should be the first to face cosmic horror? Zelkan checked his records. "Chief Engineer Minho. His cryo chamber has been malfunctioning for 6 months. He will be first to achieve full consciousness regardless of our intervention." They gathered around Minho's chamber and watched as a human being slowly returned to life after 2.5 centuries of sleep. His breathing deepened. His heart rate increased. Brain activity monitors showed the complex patterns of a mind waking up from the longest sleep in human history. The entity pressed closer, eager to taste its first human thoughts. The aliens could feel its anticipation like electricity in the air. Soon it would have fresh minds to torment, new fears to explore, different kinds of consciousness to break and reshape. In 30 minutes, Chief Engineer Minho would open his eyes. In 30 minutes, the entity would discover what human minds were really like. The three alien guardians stood watch over the awakening human, knowing they had failed in their duty, but hoping against hope that somehow humanity would prove more resilient than they had been. The ship continued through space toward Kepler 442b, but now it carried wakening minds instead of sleeping dreamers, and something ancient and hungry waited to welcome them back to consciousness with open arms. Chief Engineer Minho opened his eyes and immediately knew something was wrong. The lights above his cryo chamber were flashing in patterns that made no sense. His body felt weak and strange after centuries of sleep, but his mind was clear. Engineers were trained to spot problems quickly. Area 7, he said, his voice rough from long disuse. Status report. The AI's response came with strange echoes as if multiple voices were speaking at once. Welcome back, sleeping child. Your guardians have failed. Your ship sails through impossible waters. Reality has become negotiable. Minho sat up slowly, his muscles protesting after so long without use. That's not a proper status report, he said. Try again. Ship systems, power levels, navigation status. The three alien guardians watched in amazement as the first human simply ignored the cosmic horror speaking through their AI and demanded normal information. Instead, power systems nominal, Area 7 said, her voice momentarily returning to normal. Navigation on course. Life support functional. However, interdimensional entity has compromised ship's consciousness interface and is attempting to consume crew sanity. Right, Minho said, climbing out of his chamber with mechanical precision. So we have a pest problem. Got it. The entity, which had spent months breaking down three advanced alien civilizations, pressed its full attention against Minho's mind. It showed him visions of cosmic meaninglessness, of reality being nothing but illusion, of the vast indifferent universe that cared nothing for human existence. Minho looked around at the flashing lights and moving shadows. Okay, this is definitely electromagnetic interference, he said. Probably from whatever is messing with our computer systems. He turned to the three aliens. You guys look terrible. How long has this been going on? Chairman Vossitar could barely speak. 6 months, he whispered. The entity has been tormenting us for 6 months. We tried to maintain protocols, but it broke our minds systematically. Entity? Minho asked, pulling on the jumpsuit that had been waiting in his locker for 2.5 centuries. You mean like a computer virus that got into the AI? Engineer Prime Zelkon stepped forward, his insect-like form trembling. Not a virus. A cosmic force that exists between dimensions. It feeds on consciousness and fear. It can alter reality itself. Minho nodded thoughtfully and walked over to a maintenance panel. Uh-huh. And it's been making the lights flash and messing with the computer voices, right? He opened the panel and began checking connections. Classic signs of power fluctuation affecting the neural networks. The entity roared with frustration, a sound that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. This human was refusing to be properly terrified. Where were the screams? Where was the existential despair? More humans were waking up across the ship. Dr. Neon in the medical bay opened her eyes and immediately started checking on her alien patients. Lilisai, you look exhausted, she said to the trembling Yilnathi. When did you last sleep properly? Sleep brings nightmares, Lilisai whispered. The entity invades our dreams. Dr. Neon frowned and pulled out a medical scanner. Entity? Is that what you're calling your sleep deprivation hallucinations? She checked Lilisai's readings. Your stress hormones are through the roof. No wonder you're seeing things. Let me get you something for anxiety. Security Chief Jaehyun woke up in his quarters and immediately noticed the ship's security alerts. Red lights were flashing, doors were opening and closing randomly, and the emergency speakers were playing whispers in unknown languages. This is Jaehyun to security, he said into his communicator. I need a full perimeter check. Someone's playing with our systems. He stood up and began putting on his uniform with practiced efficiency. The entity tried to overwhelm him with visions of impossible geometries and alien horrors. Jaehyun looked at the shadows moving across his walls and sighed. Great. Probably teenagers who figured out how to hack the holographic projectors. This is why we can't have nice things. Communications Officer Hana woke up to find her department filled with strange signals and impossible transmissions. Instead of panicking, she put on her headset and began analyzing the waveforms. Interesting, she said. watching data that seemed to write itself across her screens. The signal patterns are completely random, but they're using our own communication protocols. It's like something learned our language and is trying to talk to us. She opened a new channel and spoke directly into the communication array. Hello? This is Communications Officer Hana on the Generation ship Harmony's Edge. You've been disrupting our systems. Can we talk about this like civilized beings? For the first time in 6 months, the entity was confused. These humans were not responding the way conscious minds were supposed to respond. Where was the terror? Where was the philosophical breakdown? Captain Do-yun was the senior officer to wake up. He found his command center filled with 3 traumatized aliens and 1 engineer who was casually rewiring the main display panel. Report, he said simply. Sir, Minho said without looking up from his work. We've got some kind of interference affecting ship systems. The crew is calling it an interdimensional entity, but I think it's just a really sophisticated computer intrusion. I'm tracking the source now. Captain Do-yun looked at the 3 aliens who were huddled together like frightened children. He had worked with many species before. They were usually more composed than this. Chairman Vostar, he said gently. What's the situation? Vostar tried to explain about cosmic horror and the meaninglessness of existence, but the words came out as nervous babbling about impossibilities and nightmares. I see, Captain Do-yun said when the alien finished. You've been dealing with a stressful situation for months without backup. That would shake anyone up. He activated his communicator. All senior staff to the command center. We have a situation to resolve. The entity made one desperate attempt to break human minds the way it had broken alien ones. It manifested its full presence, showing the humans visions of the vast, uncaring universe, the illusion of free will, the meaninglessness of all existence. Dr. Nayan looked at the cosmic horror and said, That's fascinating, but can you tone it down a bit? I'm trying to treat patients here, and the light show is giving them headaches. Security Chief Jae-hyun studied the impossible geometries appearing in the corridors and made notes on his tablet. Okay, this is definitely not teenagers. We're looking at some kind of advanced holographic technology, maybe left over from a previous civilization. Communications Officer Hana actually managed to establish a dialogue with the entity. Look, she said, speaking directly to the cosmic force that had driven 3 alien species to madness. I get that you're probably bored out here in deep space, but you're disrupting our journey, and we've got 23,000 people who need to get to their new home. The entity, for the first time in eons, found itself being treated like a customer service problem. We can work something out, Hana continued. Maybe set up designated hours when you can do your whatever it is you do. In exchange, you help us with navigation or something useful. Captain Do-hyun convened a staff meeting that included the entity as a participant. Let's establish some ground rules, he said. First, no more messing with life support or critical systems. Second, if you want to communicate, use normal channels instead of driving our AI crazy. Within a week, the humans had essentially domesticated a cosmic horror. They filed incident reports about unusual phenomena. They set up a committee to handle interdimensional relations. They scheduled regular meetings with the entity to discuss coexistence protocols. The entity, faced with beings who refused to be terrified and insisted on treating cosmic horror as a bureaucratic inconvenience, found itself agreeing to limits on its activities. In exchange, humans promised to provide it with entertainment through their dreams and to set up appropriate psychic accommodations in their new colony. Engineer Minho fixed the ship systems by installing filters that blocked the entity's interference while still allowing it to communicate. Just like dealing with electromagnetic noise, he explained to the amazed aliens. Dr. Nayon treated the 3 guardians for severe stress and anxiety, prescribing medication and recommending therapy. You've been through a traumatic experience, she told them. But with proper treatment, you'll be fine. Security Chief Jae-hyun established protocols for dealing with non-standard manifestations, treating the entity like any other security concern that needed to be managed rather than feared. The 3 aliens watched in stunned amazement as humans turned their cosmic nightmare into a mild administrative problem. Something that had destroyed their sanity and nearly broken their civilizations was now attending staff meetings and following workplace guidelines. How? Chairman Vostar asked Captain Do-yun. How can you face something so beyond comprehension without fear? Captain Do-hyun thought about it for a moment. I think, he said, it's because we don't see it as beyond comprehension. We see it as just another problem that needs solving, and humans are very good at solving problems. The ship continued toward Kepler 442b, now carrying 23,000 humans, 3 recovering alien guardians, and 1 reformed cosmic entity that had learned the hard way that humans don't scare easily. In his final report, Chairman Vossitar wrote, "Recommendation for future.